The kettle ticks as it cools on the stove, and the window over the sink is still gray, with the light that comes before the sun really commits to anything. 6:44 in the morning. Your phone buzzes once, face up on the counter, and you know what it is before you turn your head. The deposit. There it is. $2,412.87. You look at it once. You don't know it yet, but in the next 12 seconds, before you've decided a single thing, you're going to spend all of it. You feel that small lift under your ribs, the one that arrives every other Thursday like clockwork, half relief and half permission, and then you go back to pouring your coffee like nothing happened. You don't open the app again. You don't need to. Somewhere behind that single glance, a decision has already been made about where this money is going. Not a decision you sat down and made. Not one you could explain out loud if someone stopped you in the hallway and asked. But it's made all the same, quietly, in a part of you that never asks permission. By the time you've pulled on a shirt and found the second sock under the bed, the number on that screen has already started spending itself. Call it the 12 seconds. That's about how long it takes 12 seconds between the buzz on the counter and the moment your brain files the whole amount under a single silent heading, already gone. Rent has a claim on it. So does the card. So does the thing you keep promising yourself you'll finally deal with this month, the same promise you made last month, and the month before that, worn so smooth by now it barely feels like lying. You won't touch your banking app again for hours, and it won't matter, because the money is already leaving. That's the part nobody warns you about when you first start earning. On payday, the money starts disappearing before it's actually gone. You rinse the cup. You grab your keys off the hook by the door. And underneath the ordinary morning, without a single conscious thought from you, the arithmetic is already running. Take home minus rent. Minus the minimums. Minus the groceries you'll buy on autopilot Sunday. Minus the small, forgettable leaks you never count. You've never once done the math on paper. You just carry a rough, anxious estimate around in your chest all day like a stone you've stopped noticing you're holding. And here is the strange thing you're about to learn, the thing that will take you most of a year to believe. The problem was never the number that landed this morning. It was never the size of the paycheck. The problem is the 12 seconds that follow it, where the money gets assigned a fate without you in the room. So the question isn't how do you earn more, almost nobody's real problem is how do you earn more. The question is quieter and much harder to ask. What happens if, just once, you take those 12 seconds back? Where it goes when you're not looking. By the time you're easing into the parking lot at 8:51, the $2,412.87 already has a life of its own, and you weren't invited to a single meeting about it. Ryan Callahan pulls in 2 series down in a Porsche Macan, the dark green one, tires still shining like the dealership washed them an hour ago. He climbs out unhurried, coffee in one hand, sunglasses pushed up into his hair, and lifts his chin at you across the lot. Same title. Same pay grade, more or less. You don't ask, and he doesn't say, but the math runs anyway, quiet and automatic, the way it always does when someone else's life looks a little more finished than yours. Same paycheck, and one of you is driving that, and one of you is driving what you're driving. You wonder for a second. You don't wonder long. You've got to stand up at 9 and a coffee going cold in your hand. Inside, the day moves the way every day moves. Someone leaves bagels in the break room and you take one without thinking free. $0 out of pocket, except it never really is zero, is it? It's just money you didn't have to hand over with your own fingers, which your brain treats as the same thing. At lunch, you order the usual. Tap the card. Don't look at the total. It's fine. It's always fine. One transaction at a time, it is always, always fine. And that is precisely the trick of it, because nothing here is ever the disaster. There's no single moment you could point to and call the mistake. It's only later, at the long red light on the drive home with the blinker ticking, that you finally open the app. $1,663.40. You look at it a second longer than you meant to. Not because the number is wrong, because you cannot account for where $749 of it went, and rent hasn't even pulled yet. You try to reconstruct the day like a detective who already suspects himself. It wasn't the bagel. It wasn't just the tacos, or the second coffee, or the phone charger you grabbed because you couldn't find yours. It was all of it and none of it. It was that the second the money hit this morning, your brain had already spent it, already filed the whole thing under available, and everything after was just paperwork. There's a name for that, the kind financial people put in books. You don't need the name. You just need to notice it's true that somewhere between the buzz at 6:44 and this light refusing to turn green, the money stopped feeling like yours and started feeling like something already on its way out the door. And you're not alone in the car with this, even though it feels like the loneliest math in the world. Half the people you know are running the exact same silent equation right now, telling themselves the same "it's fine" one tap at a time. Nobody says it out loud. Everybody does it anyway. It might be the most common secret in the country. The light turns green. You drive home with $1,663.40 in an account that started the day at $2,412.87, and no real memory of deciding to spend the difference. Which means the real question was never how much you make. You could get Ryan's exact salary tomorrow, to the dollar, and 6 months from now, you'd be at this same light, running this same panic, with a slightly bigger number. The real question is what your money is doing in all the hours before you've decided anything at all. One thing worth saying out loud before we go on: this is one person's paycheck, in one city, with one set of bills. The exact numbers here are just this story's numbers, not a forecast, not a guarantee, and not advice measured for your life. What matters is the shape of what happens, not the digits. Your line, your shield, your rates, and your match will all look a little different. Step 1. Draw the line. Saturday morning, and you've been in the same corner of the couch for 20 minutes with the laptop open and your bank statement pulled up in a browser tab you keep almost closing. You told yourself you'd do this weeks ago. Just look. Actually look, line by line, instead of watching the total shrink all month and guessing at why. It's a strange kind of dread, not sharp like a bill you can't pay, but dull and low, the dread of finally seeing something you've spent a lot of energy not seeing. Your phone buzzes on the cushion. Your sister, Megan Foster, has sent a photo from somewhere with mountains behind her, cheeks pink from the cold, captioned "Best decision we ever made." You tap the little heart, happy for her and something else you don't name, then go back to the spreadsheet you've started. 2 columns. One you're calling needs. The other, for lack of anything more honest, everything else. It sounded simple when you typed the headers. It stops being simple about 4 rows in. Rent is easy. $1,650 a month, straight into needs. Groceries, about $740. Also needs, though you notice how much of that $740 was not exactly groceries. Then you hit the first subscription, the streaming service you added 2 winters ago for one show you finished and never canceled, and your cursor hovers a second too long before you drag it into everything else. Then the next one. By the time you're done, you're staring at 7 of them, $68.93 a month, for shows and apps and one gym you could name maybe 2 of. And it isn't only the subscriptions. It's the $17 lunch you grabbed twice this week because the fridge was empty. It's the ride home from Megan's going-away dinner instead of the 15-minute walk because it was raining a little. It's the impulse thing at the checkout, the upgrade you clicked because the button was right there. None of it, on its own, looks like anything. That's exactly what makes it invisible. A 6 here, a 14 there, never big enough by itself to trip an alarm, until you stack a whole month of them in one unforgiving column, and the number is suddenly, undeniably real. So you do the math you've been avoiding. Rent, groceries, power, phone, the bare cost of staying alive and housed and reachable. You add it up twice because you don't trust it the first time. It comes out to a little under half of what lands in your account each month. You sit back. You exhale. It genuinely surprises you how much that one number rearranges everything else, because now you know the other half isn't vanishing into thin air. It's going somewhere you can name. 7 subscriptions. A ride you didn't need. Lunches you bought out of tiredness, not hunger. A dozen small comforts you chose, each one reasonable, adding up to a total you never agreed to. You don't delete anything yet. That's not the point of today. You sit in the quiet of the apartment, coffee gone cold again, feeling something between embarrassment and relief. Embarrassment that it took a spreadsheet and a Saturday to see something this obvious. Relief, bigger than the embarrassment, that it was never a hole in the bottom of the boat you couldn't find. Ryan's Porsche was never the problem. Megan's mountains were never the problem. The problem was that you had never once drawn a clean line between what keeps the lights on and what doesn't. You close the laptop, but the number follows you the rest of the day, into the grocery store, into the checkout line. Everything you truly need costs less than half of what you earn, which means the other half was always supposed to be doing something. You just hadn't decided what yet. Step 2. Build the shield. 3 weeks later, the water heater in the hall closet gives out at the worst possible hour, and you come home on a cold Tuesday to a soaked carpet and that specific smell of a small disaster that's been quietly unfolding all day while you were at work. You already know how this movie goes. Something breaks, the number is bigger than you braced for, and you spend the next 2 months paying it down on a card that charges the kind of interest that should be illegal to advertise. You feel the old script start to load before you've even found the shutoff valve, the familiar tightening in your chest. You call the plumber your building has used for years, a calm man named Sam Ortiz who talks to the water heater more gently than he talks to you. He kneels, he listens to it tick and hiss, he wipes his hands, and he says the word tank like it's nothing. Then he says the number. $540. You wait for the dread. The one where you start deciding which bill slides to next month and which card absorbs the hit. You wait for it, and it doesn't come. You open your banking app, and there it is, sitting quietly in a high-yield savings account you opened 3 weeks ago and had almost forgotten about. $1,500. You move $540 out. You pay Sam. He gives you a small nod, loads his tools, and by dinner the closet is dry, and the problem is simply undramatically over. That's it. No crisis. No spiral. No 2 in the morning staring at the ceiling doing math. Just a number sliding from one account to another the way you always assumed it worked for other people and never for you. And it hadn't felt like much when you started. The account had sat at 0 for years, a vague someday fund you kept meaning to open, until the Saturday of the spreadsheet. You'd moved $300 into it that day, almost embarrassed by how small it looked sitting there alone. Then you'd kept feeding it, almost without deciding to a little off the next check, a little more off the one after, so that 3 weeks of small, unglamorous deposits had quietly turned that first $300 into $1,500. You knew, roughly, what it was supposed to become, enough to cover 3 to 6 months of that bare number you'd found, rent and groceries, and the lights staying on if everything fell apart. You weren't close yet. But $300 was a decision instead of a hope, and that was different from anything you'd ever done with money in your life. It isn't lost on you, standing there in socks on the dry carpet, that most people in this country could not have covered that $540 tonight without reaching for a credit card or a family member or a quiet, humiliating conversation. You'd been one of them for years, not because you were careless, but because you had never separated the money for staying afloat from the money for staying alive. It had all been one blurry pile in one checking account that ran dry around the 3rd week of every month, and an emergency was just whatever landed while the pile was already gone. This account isn't that pile. This is money that sits somewhere separate on purpose, quietly earning a little interest while it waits. It's not for the vacation or the dinner or the shoes on sale. It's for exactly this. A tank. A set of brakes. A job that vanishes on a Friday. The stuff that isn't a maybe, only a not yet. You pull the closet door shut, and the apartment is quiet again. For the first time in longer than you can remember, an unexpected bill didn't cost you anything you'll still be feeling next month. It cost you $540 and 4 minutes of mild inconvenience and 1 phone call to Sam. The shield held. Which means the next question isn't whether you can survive the unexpected. You just proved you can. The next question is what you're finally going to do about the debt you built back before you had a shield at all. Step 3. Kill the expensive debt. Chloe Bennett gets engaged on a Wednesday, And by Thursday, the whole floor knows, because she's wearing the ring like a headline and telling anyone who holds still about the proposal. Somewhere with water. Somewhere with a chartered yacht and a photographer flown in for the weekend. You say congratulations and you mean it. You also feel something smaller underneath it, something less flattering you'd rather not examine in the fluorescent light of the break room, so you carry it home instead. That night you're scrolling in bed, and Chloe's posted again her hand, the ring, and there beside it on the marble counter, staged just so, a Cartier love bracelet in yellow gold. The kind of thing you priced out exactly once, late, in a weak moment, and closed the tab immediately after. Right now it runs a little over $7,900. You know that precisely, because you looked it up a year ago for no reason you'd admit to another human being. You've got a card with about $2,600 of room left on it. And you do the math before you've consciously decided to, the way you always do. Minimum payments for a few months. Nobody would even know until the statement came. It wouldn't be the bracelet, obviously, but there's a version of tonight in there. A nice dinner somewhere with cloth napkins. Some small proof that you're not just the person who wires $540 to a plumber and calls it the highlight of his month. For about 4 minutes, lying there with the phone lighting your face, it feels almost reasonable. It feels, honestly, deserved. Here's the part that stops you. Instead of the store, you open the card's own app, and there it is in gray text you've scrolled past 100 times, 24.99% APR. So you do the math this time. The other kind. Whatever you charge tonight does not cost what the receipt says. It costs that, plus close to a quarter of it again, every year it goes unpaid, compounding quietly whether you look or not. The version of you that feels better for one nice dinner in April is the same version still paying for that dinner the following spring. The dinner doesn't end when the plates are cleared. That's the trick nobody puts on the menu. You already know what you're carrying. Not $7,900, nothing close, but enough, spread across 2 cards, that the interest alone takes a real monthly bite out of money that could be going somewhere that actually loves you back. You pull both balances up side by side for the first time in longer than you'd admit. One is smaller, maybe $1,200, at a gentle, forgettable rate. The other is $3,400, and it's the one quietly bleeding you at 24.99%. Here's where the feeling and the math disagree. You could knock out the small one first, watch a balance hit zero, feel that clean little rush of finishing something. It would feel like progress. But the math does not care how you feel, and the math is unambiguous. The $3,400 at 24.99% is the one actually costing you money every day you let it sit. So you send the extra toward the $3,400 instead. The boring, correct, nobody will ever congratulate you for it choice. You send $80 more than the usual payment straight at the balance that's actually hurting you, and you leave the small one at minimums for now, patient. No bracelet. No dinner charged to a card you'd resent by the time the statement came. Just a quiet transfer at 11:40 on a Thursday night, while Chloe's ring photo sits 3 scrolls up your feed, still glittering, still not yours to want. You put the phone face down. You didn't fix your whole life. You just didn't make it worse, which turns out to be its own strange kind of relief, the kind that just quietly means tomorrow costs a little less than it would have. Step 4. Put your money to work. HR sends the same email every October, and every October for 2 years you've deleted it without reading past the subject line. Open enrollment. It always reads like homework in a language you never signed up to learn. This year, for a reason you couldn't quite explain, maybe just because you'd started looking at the other numbers you actually open it. Buried in the 3rd paragraph, past the dental stuff and the parking stuff, is the single line that stops you cold. Your company matches 100% of what you put into your retirement plan, up to 5% of your pay. You read it once. You read it again, slower, because it reads like a typo someone will catch and correct. You've been contributing exactly 0% since the day you started, 2 years ago, because the form looked complicated and there was always something more urgent pulling at the paycheck. You do the math on a sticky note, pen pressing a little too hard. 5% of what you make is a real, specific number. And the match is that same number, handed back to you, doubled before it's even touched an investment. No adult with a job title has ever simply offered you free money. You update the contribution to 5% before you can talk yourself out of it. That night, you call your uncle, Gary Malone, mostly to complain about something unrelated, and the conversation drifts, the way it always does with Gary, toward money, because money is the language he actually speaks. He says Roth IRA, like it's the most obvious thing in the world, like everyone already has one. You don't. You admit it. He explains it the way an uncle explains things, half exactly right and half a story about a truck he bought in 1991. But the part that sticks, the part you write on the sticky note under the 5% is this: whatever grows in there, you never pay tax on again. Not now. Not when you pull it out in 40 years. This year, he says, you can put up to $7,500 into one. You don't have $7,500. You want to laugh at the size of it. But you have about $70 a week you can genuinely spare now that you've drawn the line and can see where the money lives. And for the first time, that number feels like enough to start with, instead of too small to bother. You open the account on your phone that same night, on the edge of the bed in your work clothes, half afraid the feeling will pass if you stand up. $70 goes in. It vanishes into a target date fund you picked, mostly because the name had a year in it that made sense. It doesn't feel like anything. No confirmation email with fireworks. Just a plain number in an account that didn't exist yesterday. You let yourself run the math once, only once, because you know it can become its own trap. What could $300 a month become if you kept doing this, without heroics, from now until you're 65? You plug in the boring historical average, and the answer that comes back is something close to 7 figures. You stare at it the way you stared at the paycheck that first morning. You let yourself picture, for exactly as long as it takes to close the tab, a small cedar house on a lake near Coeur d'Alene, water on one side and pines on the other, a dock, a chair on the dock, listed right now at $1.05 million. You don't screenshot it. You just needed to know, once, that there's a version of the math where that isn't a fantasy you're not allowed to have. What stays with you, though, isn't the lake house or the 7 figures. It's the order that there was an order all along, and nobody had ever told you. It turns out building wealth was never one dramatic move. It was mostly just knowing that order and following it before you could talk yourself out of it. The match first, because turning down a match is turning down money that's already, legally, yours. The Roth second, because 40 years of paying no tax is worth far more than it sounds on a random Tuesday night. Then, someday, whatever's left over, into something boring and broad that quietly owns the whole market instead of betting on one clever corner of it. You turn off the light and lie back, $70 lighter and further ahead than you've ever been, at the very same time a sentence you wouldn't have understood a year ago. Step 5. The machine that doesn't sleep. It's a Friday. 6 weeks after the Roth account with $70 in it stopped feeling like a big deal, and you're across town at your cousin Nate Warren's place for his birthday. The kind of night with too much pizza and a game on mute that nobody's really watching and everyone glancing at anyway. Around 11, Nate starts talking about his new watch, an Omega Speedmaster, turning his wrist under the kitchen light so it catches, and he explains, unprompted, how he financed it over 24 months through the boutique, because it's basically free if you don't think about it. You nod along. You don't say what you're actually thinking, that you know precisely what don't think about it costs, now, down to the APR, because you almost ran the exact same math yourself a few months back over a bracelet that isn't sitting on anyone's wrist tonight. It isn't your job to fix Nate's Friday. You eat another slice and let it go. You leave a little after midnight, and when you get home, you don't check your accounts. That's the part that stops you on the stairs, because you notice you don't need to. Payday was 2 days ago, and you did nothing on payday at all. No transfers. No frantic mental math at a red light. No 12 seconds where your brain tried to spend the whole thing before you'd decided anything. It just happened without you. The bills account already had exactly what it needed. The savings already took its cut. The Roth already pulled its $70 while you were in a meeting. You found out you'd done it all correctly by checking, out of old anxious habit, 3 full days after it had stopped mattering whether you checked. That's the thing nobody tells you about the first few months of doing this right. You brace for it to feel like discipline, like a diet, like something you'll white-knuckle every payday and eventually fail at. And instead it stops feeling like discipline and starts feeling like nothing at all. You used to make a small, draining decision every single time money moved. Now, the decision happens once, back on that weeknight, in your work clothes when you set the routing up, and after that, it simply runs. It doesn't care that you're at Nate's eating cold pizza at midnight, or exhausted, or half tempted by a watch on somebody else's wrist. It moves the same amount, the same day, every time, whether you're paying attention or not. You built something that works while you sleep, and the strangest part is how ordinary it feels from the inside. You think, on the drive home, about the $1,663.40 you were left with that first Thursday, the number with $749 in it you couldn't account for. You think about the checking account you used to leave everything sitting in, unsorted, undecided, quietly losing a little value every month while prices climbed around it in the dark. That account is just a doorway now. Money touches your checking for a day, maybe two, before it's already somewhere else, already working, already assigned before you've had the chance to talk yourself into anything you'd regret. You get into bed a little after 1, phone on the nightstand, and you don't reach for it. Nothing to check. Nothing to move. Nothing to decide. Nate's watch is still on his wrist across town, ticking off a payment plan he'll be thinking about for the next 23 months. You're just here, in the dark, owing nobody anything for tonight, which you're beginning to understand is a kind of wealth that never shows up in a photo. The next 644. You still get paid every 2 weeks. The number still lands the same way it always did, quiet, a single short buzz against the tile in that gray hour before the sun commits to anything. $2,412.87. Nothing about the paycheck got bigger. You didn't get the raise. You didn't get Ryan's car or Chloe's ring or Nate's watch. What's different, the only thing that's different, is you. You don't reach for the phone the second it hits anymore. You don't do the anxious math, because the math already happened days ago, without you. Tuesday will still come. The account will still dip low before the next check lands, and some small, old part of you will still feel that familiar flicker of doubt in the hour before payday, that muscle memory of scarcity. It doesn't fully go away. It just stops being the thing in charge. It stops getting a vote. Somewhere tonight, while you're doing something else entirely, your money is already moving, already becoming something, already working a shift you don't have to supervise. Living, mostly, instead of managing, that's what it turns out to be. And the whole formula was never complicated, which should make you a little angry that nobody just said it plainly years ago. Draw the line, so you can see what you actually need. Build the shield, so the next broken thing is a 4-minute problem instead of a 2-month one. Kill the expensive debt, the boring correct way, worst rate first. Put the rest to work in order the match, then the Roth, then the broad boring market. Then set the whole thing to run without you, so the 12 seconds after the buzz never get to quietly decide your life again. Before you get there, do one small thing. In the comments, tell me which of the 5 steps you're actually standing on right now. Drawing the line, building the shield, killing the debt, setting the order, or living on autopilot, and name the one you're going to set up this week. I read them, and other people building the same quiet system read them too. If you want more of this kind of plain, unglamorous money talk, subscribe and stick around. That's the whole reason this channel exists. 5 steps. Done once, mostly, in the right sequence. Not a personality. Not a windfall. Not a secret the rich are keeping from you. Just an order of operations, run on autopilot, quietly compounding in the background of an ordinary life. That is how ordinary people actually build wealth, not in one brave leap, but in a sequence you set up once and let run. The only real question left is what you'll notice next time your phone lights up at 6:44 in the morning, in that same gray hour before the sun has committed to anything at all, and, for the first time in your adult life, you realize you don't have to do a single thing about it.